PM Modi what? A very good morning. You're watching Race for the White House here on India Today Global. The Democratic National Convention has kicked off its day one, and we've just heard US President Joe Biden speak, endorsing Kamala Harris. The official announcement will take place at the conclusion of this entire four-day convention that's taking place in Chicago. But this was a lot of emotions that we saw through the entire evening in Chicago. Many of the Democrats have come outspoken. There are videos that they put out about Kamala Harris's life, the contribution of Kamala Harris's mother in the life of Kamala Harris and her sister, as also a specific video on Donald Trump. A lot of conversation on how he is a bully and the cases against him, that it is a prosecutor versus a convicted felon. That's the story, that's the narrative we'll be seeing through the four-day convention. But more importantly, a lot of emphasis on the rights of women when it comes to abortion. And there were case studies and stories. We'll take you through that. I also have my colleague Rohit Sharma who will be joining me. But before that, let's just look at this emotional Joe Biden as he comes onto the stage to endorse Kamala Harris.
Thank you.
And joining me from the United States of America, covering the Democratic National Convention, is Rohit Sharma. Rohit, very good evening to you there in the US. A lot is happening in Chicago when it comes to the Democratic National Convention, but take us through the key points, because we really now can see how the Democrats are firming up their election agenda against the Republicans. There are a few very key issues that they're going to focus on to pin or corner the Trump camp. And it seems like they have made a start with all the issues that have come up on day one.
Yeah, absolutely. And throughout the day, we saw all the leaders take the stage, and we saw the progressive take the stage. We saw some central Democrats take the stage and hit the theme. I mean, the theme for today was Kamala Harris for the people. And they wanted to remind voters about abortion rights. They wanted to drive the message that Trump was the person who put in Supreme Court judges who overturned Roe v. Wade. Immigration was another topic they were talking about, and how his harsh policies would alienate a lot of immigrants living in this country, probably deport them as well. And the
Yes.
last point was economy. I think they were trying to sort of talk about how inflation has gone down, and it will be bad if Trump comes back to the power. Some alluded to Project 2025. But long story short, I think everybody was given, this template to talk about, like January 6th, talk about how things, got bad, how Donald Trump is going to be bad for democracy and constitution. And I think all of those speeches had the same theme. And I mean, I think that's what probably we'll see in the next three days. But again, the highlight, was when President Joe Biden took the stage, and probably we'll talk about that as well. But I think in the end, I think we sort of know what the Democrats are running for. I mean, they want to be able to, resonate with some of the independent voters who really deeply care about democracy and abortion. And I think those are driving points for Democrats going forward.
Right. Again, like very interesting comments and statements and remarks that are being made. But Rohit, one very important thing that you really spoke of right now is economy. How do you see the Democrats who are actually in charge right now? And that's one area where the Trump camp is really trying to pin the Democrats down on. That Vice President Kamala Harris is part of the Biden Harris administration, so to say. So she has no one to blame but herself. And over here, talking about economy, fixing the economy, do you think there'd be more takers to this argument or this entire line of argument at all?
Well, look, they have to take this issue head on. They've been polling, badly when it comes to economy and inflation. I mean, that's the one of the reasons why Kamala Harris came out and unveiled her economic plan a couple of days ago. I think 2 days ago, she talked about jumpstarting the economy. Giving more money to people who want to build house or buy houses in America. I mean, like she has to. I mean, and again, I always say this, there is a very fine line where she can sort of distance herself because she was not the final decision maker. But at the end of the day, she has to take this on. Look, and one of the other things that they've also talked about is how economy got into bad shape because of COVID, and they were the ones that pulled out the economy out of COVID. So I mean, those are some of the things. But again, even if that inflation has come down, Geeta, it's if you talk to a normal American citizen on the street, everybody still is feeling the pinch. And I don't think this issue is just going to go away. I think Trump, is speaking facts when he says that economy was great, job market was great, and our gas prices were $2. We are still lingering about $3.5, $4 here in Washington D.C. So a lot of things that Kamala will have to defend. But yes, I think they definitely want to take this issue head on, and that's why they keep talking about economy and sort of, telling the voters that they have a plan. Now, if they were able to implement this plan when she wins, we'll have to wait and watch.
Well, again, there was a lot of conversation. We will come back to economy, Rohit, because that's a very important aspect, and it will be an overriding agenda of the Trump camp. So, the day one, we will now see responses from the Trump camp on everything that has been said. But women's rights, the focus on how Kamala Harris's life has all been about fighting for justice, preserving justice, so on and so forth, is something that is that going to be a major thrust through and through that we'll see?
Absolutely. The Democrats performed really well in 2022. I think March 2022 is when they overturned Roe v. Wade. They went into summer talking about it, and they did better than expected performance in the midterms in 2022. That's when, sort of Kamala, came into her own being, and she went throughout the nation talking about the issue. She's absolutely, made this as her agenda, and we'll absolutely keep hearing about it in the next day. I mean, next day. I mean, I probably should have said next 3 months or so, because it polls so well among all the women voters. And look, this is the bank for Democrats. The women voters, the suburban voters. They understand what this issue is. So I think that is absolutely going to be central to this entire campaign that Kamala is going to be running on.
Well, absolutely. But how your take on the first day? Do you think they've really captured the imagination of the American public? Do you think this is the statements, the remarks that have come from various quarters, all the Democrats who spoke, the leaders who spoke, then we saw the First Lady, daughter introducing Joe Biden. Do you think it has really, or it could really capture the imagination of the American public?
Look, Geeta, there was an old saying in DC that the Republicans, they follow the hierarchy and Democrats fall in love. We've seen in this election is actually the reverse of it. The Republicans have fallen in love with their candidate, and Democrats are following the hierarchy, meaning, Joe Biden, they have to deal with. Fortunately, unfortunately, only time will tell. But at the end of the day, I think if you want us to recap day one, I think they're trying to hit those points that are polling really well in those swing states because they know for a fact that she has to win Pennsylvania, she has to win Wisconsin, and I think that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to hit those themes. I mean, we also saw why she picked the VP candidate she did in the end. So I think they're going with a lot of data in this. And I mean, if you take out Joe Biden's speech and the emotional quotient we got from that, I think when we had the RNC, Trump's day one was more, it was watched by more people. It had more emotional quotient because he had just survived an assassination attempt. So if you compare day one of RNC versus day one of DNC, I think RNC was a much better show.
Right. Let's listen into a few of the important remarks by President Biden, beginning with his statement on democracy, something that they are going to emphasize on, and the narrative is that it is Trump who is destroying the fabric of democracy of the United States of America. So listen in.
I believe then, and I believe now, that progress was and is possible. Justice is achievable. And our best days are not behind us, they're before us. Now it's summer. The winter has passed. And with a grateful heart, I stand before you now on this August night to report that democracy has prevailed. Democracy has delivered. And now democracy must be preserved.
And then he also goes on to endorse Kamala Harris. Let's take a look at that and I'll then come back to Rohit.
Are you ready to vote for freedom? Are you ready to vote for democracy and for America? Let me ask you, are you ready to elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz? Vice President of the United States.
Okay, that was endorsement by none other than the American president himself. Rohit, coming back to you, we see that the polls are looking good for Kamala Harris. She's been doing well in the polls, but at the end of the day, it's all about the swing states, the number crunching, who gets the sway in these states, and in that, what's your reading of what's really happening on the ground? And is it too early to say that the polls actually are reflective of what could happen on the 5th of November?
Polls are polls, Geeta. You know this well than I. We've both done this for a long time. On the day
And the last elections, Rohit, and the last elections.
Exactly. So I mean, I think the only poll that matters is November 5th. I think at this point in time, if my memory serves me well, Hillary was leading some states by 10, 12 points.
Absolutely.
And she ended up losing those states. Look, I mean, yes, the election is closer than it was with when Biden was in the race. There's a lot of work to do. In fact, Kamala Harris herself in one of the rallies today said that people should go out and vote. We saw the same thing from Hillary Clinton when she spoke about it. She said there are these cracks in the ceiling, the glass ceiling that they talk about, but we have to break the ceiling, which means you've got to go out and vote and get motivated. I mean, there's a lot that will happen between now and November 5th. There's always that October surprise. For our viewers, the October surprise in 2016 was James Comey coming out and talking about Hillary Clinton's email, which Hillary blames that shifted the election. So there's a lot that could happen, but the race has definitely gotten closer. People are talking about how Kamala has, she can win the Rustbelt states, and she also has a way to win the southern states and get to the White House.
Can she, Rohit? Can she really win the Rust Belt states?
Say that again, Geeta. Sorry, I missed that.
I said, can Kamala really win the Rust Belt?
I think from what the polls are telling us, and again with that big conditions apply, she has a chance to win definitely Michigan, but I think it's going to be difficult to convince Pennsylvania. I think that in a dead heat, Trump holds a lead in some of the polls in Pennsylvania, and she cannot lose Pennsylvania. She absolutely has to win. There are 19 electoral votes in that state.
Yes.
So she has to win that, or flip Georgia or Arizona, which looks tough. So it's going to be very close.
It is indeed looks like it's going to be very tough, and very close. But then again, a sigh of relief in the Democratic camp, because at least it's not a walkover for Trump, Rohit. It very well could have been that, should Biden not have stepped down, and should Kamala Harris not have been chosen the candidate for the Democrats.
Yeah, Biden, I mean, he didn't do anything wrong, and I was talking with somebody else and I said, I don't think he did anything wrong. You cannot fight age, and I think that was his problem. And
That's well put.
with elevating Kamala Harris, what they've done is they've taken the biggest talking point of Republicans, which was the age of Joe Biden. I think Donald Trump is almost twice, 20 years younger than Kamala Harris. So I think they've done that. But then again, she's fighting against gender biases. She's an African American woman. She really did not win any primaries in 2020, something that President Trump keeps talking about. So it's going to get a little, nasty for her after this DNC. On one thing I definitely do want to talk about, Geeta, is the fact that, our mainstream media in the US hasn't really dug deep into the Kamala Harris campaign. We've seen the love.
How
and all
can
that.
they? How can they, Rohit? She has hardly been given access to. I mean, she's hardly given access to media. She's hardly done
Yeah.
interviews. Just doing rallies is not good enough. No press interaction. So how can they? They're only the
Exactly.
camp that is actually against Trump is just going ahead and doing the pro Kamala stories. But there's nothing really to tell over here, is there?
No, and I think that is what will change, Geeta. I think she will have to do these interviews. She'll have to do the sit downs and she'll have to do the radio interviews and all that. I mean, that's how the campaign is run. So I think once we all get a look at that in her interviews and, not, prepared questions and answers, I think that will be a true test of her campaign and her character. And I think that's what most Americans would look forward to once the DNC is done.
Is America really prepared for a woman president? That certainly is a question. Hillary Clinton came very, very close, Rohit. And in her speech today, she did speak about the history of how many women actually tried to get from the time that they were allowed to vote, tried to make it to the top position, made it to quite a few tickets, but winning those tickets also was very, very difficult. And she does come out and talk about the future of the United States of America. Let's listen to what Hillary Clinton had to say. And then I'll come back, Rohit, to ask you about a very pertinent question that everybody always keeps discussing: likability of Kamala Harris within the Democratic camp. But listen to Hillary Clinton first.
6 million Americans vote for a future where there are no ceilings on our dreams. And afterwards, we refused to give up on America. Millions marched, many ran for office. We kept our eyes on the future. Well, my friends, the future is here. I wish my mother and Kamala's mother could see us. They would say, keep going. Shirley and Jerry would say, keep going. Women fighting for reproductive health care are saying, keep going. Families building better lives, parents stretching to afford child care, young people struggling to pay their rent. They're all asking us to keep going. So, with faith in each other and joy in our hearts, let's send Kamala Harris and Tim Walz to the White House.
Okay, that was Hillary Clinton saying the future is here. So, Rohit, is the future really here? One. And secondly, like I said before we heard Hillary Clinton speak, likability of Kamala Harris within the Democratic camp. We're seeing all of them now come together, rally behind her. She's got the funds, she's got the money. But when it comes to issues within the Democratic camp, do those issues still exist?
Well, the Democrats would certainly love to believe that this is the future, and the future is here in November. They definitely do believe that. I think some of them do. The voters is a different story altogether. I think a lot of people forget that Obama was a gifted orator. He was able to pull in the young voters. He was able to pull in those people that would traditionally vote for Republicans. Can Kamala do that? I think that's a big question. It's not that, people have forgotten, how Trump administration was, but then again, she is an incumbent, and whatever people might or might not say, I think, whatever record uh, Joe Biden has, she's the one who has to defend it. In an ideal world scenario, would she have wanted to be the nominee now? I really don't think so. But I think at the end of the day, people have to sort of make up their minds on what she has to say going forward. We haven't seen an immigration plan from her. I think a lot of people have talked about how immigration is a central issue on this campaign. She hasn't really talked about that yet. We haven't seen her, really talk about foreign policy. America is fighting two wars at the same time right now in Ukraine and in Middle East. We haven't seen what her policy is going to be. So I think a lot of people will probably make decisions after, she can actually come out and talk about those things. But as far as the her likability goes, to your question, I think she's pretty likable among people. I think people like her. One thing she's done is, she's stuck to the campaign and her notes, and she hasn't really gone off script, which we used to see a lot back in the day when and people used to sort of ban her for her word salads and whatnot, and we haven't really seen that in the past month or so. So I think she's doing good, and if she sticks to this, we might well as see the first female president of the United States.
Well, to a few points, very, very accurate. She actually has not spoken, or the Democrats have not really picked up the issue of immigration, because that they'll be on the back foot on. And we do know that the Trump camp is pushing on these issues because that's where they feel they have strength in debate and argument. But talking about debate, the next presidential debate would be between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Do you think both sides are prepared? Because when it comes to oratory skills, Donald Trump is also not known to be a great orator. If in fact anything else, it would be the bullish attitude that certainly Kamala Harris will again, rally the crowd around, talking about the proof of his bullying. Are both camps prepared? Is the Kamala camp a little jittery? How does it look in terms of preparation for the presidential debate, which is not far away from now?
Yeah, which is only about 2.5 weeks away from now.
Yes.
So the Trump camp has had help from former Democrat Tulsi Gabbard. She was helping Donald Trump out because she sort of had very TV moments with Kamala Harris back in 2020 during the 2020
Yes.
primary debate. So she's obviously there helping out Donald Trump. Kamala Harris has also been preparing for it. The challenge is with Trump, you just cannot know what to prepare for, and I think that's what Hillary Clinton found out in 2016. That you could prepare for policy, and the guy's not interested in talking about policy.
True.
And you could not, and also you cannot go blow with Donald Trump. That's what Marco Rubio found out. So it's very tough debating Trump, and I think that's exactly what he did. I mean, he won the debate very, very, easily when he was debating Joe Biden way back in June. Well, that seems like a long time ago now, but so it's going to be tough. It's going to be very tough for Kamala Harris to come out as a winner. I think the strategy would be do no harm as far as Kamala Harris is concerned. And, I think for Trump, it would be he would just want to repeat his performance from June and sort of take it from there.
Okay. There is one more statement by Donald Trump that is on political violence. That's something that also is going to be a major part of the conversation. So let's just listen into what President Biden had said, and we'll come back to the conversation.
I stepped to the Capitol on a cold January day. I raised my right hand and I swore an oath to you and to God to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and to faithfully execute the office of the President of the United States. In front of me was a city surrounded by the National Guard. Behind me, a Capitol just 2 weeks before had been overrun by a violent mob. But I knew then, from the bottom of my heart, that I knew now, there is no place in America for political violence.
Okay, political violence. That again is going to be something that will be will be a highlight of Kamala Harris campaign during elections. Rohit, what's on the agenda in how they're going to look at the Jan 6th insurrection and take it forward from there on having conversations about political violence that was justified by the Trump camp, and how they do anticipate violence even closer maybe to the elections or on the day of the results?
It is possible. It's a real possibility that we live in after, Jan 6th. Look, if Donald Trump were to lose this election, we will definitely see some kind of violence, maybe not at the scale of what we saw, because I think the agencies, the Capitol Police, I think a lot of states will be prepared, especially Democratic states will be prepared for it. It will also depend on how some of the leaders, individual leaders or some governors, would react to if Donald Trump losing. If they want to jump on the Trump bandwagon again, and, we'll probably see them get involved in some kind of violence. But again, I think that's a real danger that we live in. Some people have also said that, if he loses, he's going to, do the exact same thing, called the election stolen. And this time, he probably would go more unhinged. But we do not know that. I think that's a real possibility. Trump was asked about election, and he would accept the results in one of the interviews. And he said, only if they beat me fairly. I mean, and that actually means, whatever it means to Trump in his head, he definitely lost in 2020. He hasn't never accepted that he lost in 2020. So what does that will take for him to convince that he loses in 2024? We do not know that. So there's this real, danger of that. The other aspect, which, I think Joe Biden was trying to highlight and other people were also trying to highlight, was the fact that, he does not believe in Constitution. So if he were to become president of the United States, he may or may not leave office, although he has said that he will. But I think, there are doubts in some people and, thinking about, what Donald Trump winning or losing would do. And I think these doubts probably are also aimed at winning some of the voters, making sure that, they fall in line with Democrats and their thinking.
Okay. One last aspect that I'd like to discuss before I wrap this up, and we'll keep coming back to you maybe a little later, although it's quite late in the night there in DC, in the United States of America, Rohit. But a major part of the conversation when it came to women, case studies being brought in, was about rights, the abortion rights, Roe v. Wade. That's an important, a very important agenda that the Kamala Harris camp is going to use through the election campaign. But one story and one girl and her story was telling. Let's look at the story of this 12-year-old and to really understand the import and the importance of having rights, abortion rights in the United States of America. Take a look.
Growing up, I was an all-American girl. Varsity soccer captain, cheerleading captain, homecoming queen, and survivor. was raped by my stepfather after years of sexual abuse. At age 12, I took my first pregnancy test, and it was positive. That was the first time I was ever told, you have options. I can't imagine not having a choice. But today, that's the reality for many women and girls across the country because of Donald Trump's abortion bans. He calls it a beautiful thing. What is so beautiful about a child having to carry her parent's child? There are other survivors out there who have no options. And I want you to know that we see you. We hear you. Kamala Harris will sign a national law to restore the right to an abortion. She will fight for every woman and every girl, even those who are not fighting for her. And now, I am honored to introduce another champion for women, a leader who's fought for me and for so many others, Governor Andy Beshear.
Well, Rohit, that's a 12-year-old. The story of a 12-year-old who comes out and says she was raped by her stepfather, and imagine not having the right to abortion, the access to abortion. And that could be the story of many. In some states where there are very strict laws against abortion, that still is a story. And we've done series on how expensive it is for them to really travel to other states that allow abortion in those states. And this is something that will certainly bring in all the women vote bank for Kamala Harris, don't you think?
So I couldn't get the entirety of your question, Geeta. I think I had an audio error, but I could understand what you're saying. I think I get the gist of it. And I'll try to answer that. I think, sometimes you wonder, you live in a first world country or not. I mean, women don't have rights for abortion. I mean, that's ridiculous, right? And I think, we talk about how elections in certain countries could be based on religion and whatnot, but America also is. There is a conservative movement, a lot of religious people who don't believe in abortion, and that's driving, some of the states and even, at the federal level, people to make decisions and laws that prohibit women from abortion. So I think, this is definitely one of the major issues. Although it will take Kamala Harris, if she wins the presidency, at least 60 senators, plus majority in the House to make a law, which is very difficult, honestly. I don't think we've had a supermajority in so many years. But at the heart of it all is the fact that women in the United States, depending on which state they live, their bodies can be dictated by law. And that's not how it should be in a free country, in a free world that we live in. So a very divisive topic, especially in 2024 in America.
But Rohit, a divisive topic, but do you think that will really bring in the women vote bank behind Kamala Harris?
It will. It has during 2022, and I'm pretty sure it will. And look, Geeta, she doesn't have to go convince women voters in Arkansas or North Dakota or South Dakota. She's going after the suburban women voters in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio.
Absolutely.
Right? And I think that this message, resonates with those voters in those states.
Well, on that note, let's look at the last aspect of our conversation today. This is DNC one, but all of them very clearly and in a beautiful way, Rohit, have also bid farewell to Joe Biden. Where they have talked about his legacy, they have talked about how important his presidency really was and that he held good in very, very, very difficult times. So we listened to Kamala Harris thanking Joe Biden and then come back to you before we end the show.
Of service to our nation, and for all you will continue to do. We are forever grateful to you. People from every corner of our country and every walk of life are here, united by our shared vision for the future of our country. And this November, we will come together and declare with one voice, as one people, we are moving forward. Let us fight for the ideals we hold dear, and let us always remember, when we fight, we win.
Well, this is in many ways then one, Rohit, goodbye for President Biden and also recognition for the work he's done, isn't it? And that's how it's going to look through the 4 days?
Yeah, I think history will be kind to President Biden. He hasn't lost a single election ever he started running for Senate when he was a 32, 33-year-old. Very sharp senator, very sharp vice president, maybe not, what people probably see now. I think also the fact that, say what people may, he did make a decision to step aside because he saw the data and he thought, that's the right thing to do. So I think history will be kind to him. Kamala Harris coming and, doing that surprise, on the stage. Other people, Senator Chris Coons talking about him, Jill Biden talking about him. This was his, sort of last, big, audience. We'll definitely see him around. We'll see him during the campaign. We'll probably see him during Christmas party. But that's about it. I think he's going to retire from public life. And I think, as I said, at the beginning, history will be kind to Joe Biden. And remember him as a good president. I'm not sure about great, but definitely a good president.
Okay, a good president might not be great, but like you said, Rohit, history will be kind. We will continue our coverage here on India Today Global. This is day one of the Democratic National Convention. A lot of good speakers. Concluded with President Biden speaking, and there are important speakers through the next 3 days as well. It will culminate with Kamala Harris herself coming on the stage. Rohit will keep tracking all the developments that are happening over there, and we will also be bringing us important interviews and voices from the ground in Chicago. Rohit, thank you so much for joining us. It's late out there, but we will keep connecting with you as and when the DNC begins tomorrow. The day 2 of the DNC, and in the meanwhile keep logging on to India Today Global to get all the little interesting snippets from the Democratic National Convention, as also stories of how important some of the issues are for the Trump camp, for the Kamala Harris camp. We will also be bringing you analysis on what's really happening on the ground, and watch our special show Race for the White House, which is again a continuous coverage on what's happening on a daily basis in the United States of America when it comes to elections. Rohit, thank you so much for joining, and thank you viewers for logging in to India Today Global.